Good morning from Bhutan. I'm very privileged to be with you. What you see is people dancing in a festival that I created. As you know, dance is a technique or innovation for ecstasy. And during peak dancing, what happens is that we feel joy because we forget ourselves. Dancing is an expression of health and exuberance. But my humble presentation is not exciting like a dance or a festival. What I will do is I will firstly present the concept of 9 domains of gross national happiness, GNH from now onwards. Secondly, I will focus on the domains of psychological well-being, time-use balance, health and community vitality, because they have broader implications for health and well-being. And thirdly, I will sketch the interface between gross national happiness and public policies. So this is my plan. Can you move on to next slide? I would like to first show how happiness is measured by certain constructs, especially in West. But this graph is about Bhutan. Subjective well-being is the dominant concept of happiness in the West. In that, people are asked to assess their own life on a scale of 0 to 10. And of course, individual's assessment depends on the idealized life she dreams. Most Bhutanese score between 5 and 7, but in countries where people are very happy, the scores are between 6 and 9. And these scores are used for international comparisons. But the more important use of such kind of score is to explore the relative importance of different causes of happiness, which I will now show. Can you move to next slide? When we look at the Bhutanese data, we find that there are 11 or 10 significant explanatory variables or factors for happiness or life satisfaction. But from the point of view of mental health, maintaining positive emotions, or thwarting or controlling negative emotions, practicing meditation, which is associated with positive emotions, having good physical and mental health are crucial to happiness. Other than that, being able to trust people, which implies trustworthiness on the part of oneself and others, and regular socialization also explain happiness. Overworking is very detrimental to happiness. But we should not, of course, avoid hard work. Like US President Ronald Reagan, he is supposed to have quipped that he has heard people get killed by excessive hard work, so he never took any chance. Next, please. In the slide that just went away, I also tried to show a painting of mine of blue sheep basking in after shower sunshine. In happiness literature, the experience of color of nature is rarely discussed, but for us painters, we know that the power in healing and energizing the lethargic psychology by color and light is very important. What you see here, however, is the wheel. The wheel, which is a depiction of sun in an artistic way, often stood for the ungraspable whole, a holistic approach to anything, but especially in GNH, should address happiness and well-being. Something which is holistic must also be global in coverage. I mean, it cannot be just a thing which is applicable to a small country or a small community. And in order to do so, to be able to have global coverage, it must also be multidimensional, and it must articulate economic, social, cultural, spiritual, ecological, communal, and temporal elements of our life. And lastly, the value and lessons of a holistic approach as opposed to a reductionist approach, will have to be timelessly true. Next, please. So our life and its multiple needs, in order for us to flourish, draws really from various resources and or capital. Contemporarily, valuation and dependence of our well-being and happiness have increasingly become monolithic. We falsely believe that and value economic capital as the main source of our welfare and happiness. By neglecting culture, neglecting ecology, by neglecting community and spirituality. That is the balance we have to restore now to broaden the base of our well-being and happiness. Next slide, please. The notion of GNH is really inclusive of a diverse sets of capitals or resources, as you see from this wheel, which now have transposed those 5 quadrants of capitals onto the wheel of GNH, so to speak. The definition of GNH is inclusive of both subjective well-being and other wider notions or conceptions of happiness, like eudaimonic flourishing. The wheel of GNH, if you see, has 9 golden spokes, or 9 domains of GNH, which includes conventional development constituents like living standard, health and education. It also includes slightly newer concerns of governance, such as good governance, human rights, and environmental protection and preservation. But the slightly more radical or innovative aspects of gross national happiness are community vitality, cultural resilience and diversity, and balanced time use and psychological well-being. Next, please. The famous Sarkozy Commission report of 2009, I think, also identified similar multidimensional areas of the quality of life measurement, but they didn't go into how they should be exactly measured. The Sarkozy Commission report rather proposed a separate dashboard sets of indicators instead of aggregating them into a composite indicator or index. Next, please. Next slide, please. So the GNH indicator also consists of 33 different indicators. The 33 different indicators further combine or aggregate a total of 124 variables as the main building blocks of GNH index. Next, please. So here you see the number of indicators. 24 of them are subjective and 9 of them are quantitative or objective. The idea is that we should assess our life conditions or progress from both point of view, not only objective but also subjective one. And if either of these set of indicators are moving forward, it is good. But usually quantitative indicators show a lot of progress, but the subjective indicators get stuck, and that should be a matter of great concern. So please, next slide. In terms of weighting, the subjective indicators carry far less weight compared to the objective or quantitative ones. Next, please. Now, about the purpose of these GNH indicators. The choice of indicators that drive our organizational performance is one of the most sensitive judgments we have to make as a society, because the indicators are not neutral. They embody huge value judgments, and we have to be aware of that. If we are only concerned exclusively about material goods as the key constituent of our welfare, of happiness, then intangible spheres of our life will be neglected. So the purpose of GNH indicator as a whole is to guide development, to guide sectoral policies, and to guide allocation according to the priority of GNH. Next, please. I mentioned about 9 domains. I would like to highlight a few of the domains. Now here you see the conceptual structure of what we call the cultural diversity and resilience domain. And cultural domain shows that our survey, which is conducted according to this kind of schemes, assesses the cultural continuity of key elements of a community, like its dialect, like its artisan skills, because artisan skills I see as really necessary for human well-being, but it's also necessary because it's the basis of the production of the material culture. And it also assesses values and cultural events like village celebrations of ritual dramas, dance, and arts. Next, please. Non-material sources of happiness, such as socialization, is extremely deep still in Bhutan, and I think these factors explain a lot of subjective well-being, although in terms of per capita income and material infrastructure, Bhutan is still a developing country. As you see here on the chart, 20% of Bhutanese socialize every day with members of their family for an average of 63 minutes, and another 89 minutes they socialize with friends, neighbors, and relatives. Next, please. This is the conceptual structure of what we mean by community vitality domain. And here you see that the relationship of belonging and support within and between households should be very deep. So we have to evaluate what are these supports or what are the factors underlying this deep sense of belonging. And they may be the level of giving and receiving various gifts, gifts of social time, gift of labor, or gift of goods. And GNH envisions a person to be very deeply bonded to her community, which should be further characterized by safety, trustworthiness, and very little, if possible, fear of victimization by other human beings. Next, please. But since the introduction of television with many channels, almost as many as 36 in 99, the pattern of time use is changing quite rapidly. Here you see that the devotion of time to TV watching is beginning to get very entrenched in urban Bhutan. There are early signs that TV is drawing time away from meditative prayers and meditation, which is very popular in Bhutan. Next, please. Yes, this chart, again in the background you see designs and paintings of mine. Here, psychological well-being, how it is construed and how we try to measure through our survey. Anyway, the main point is that the person, according to GNH, should have psychological attributes which free her from sort of negative emotions which repress her, negative emotions like anger, jealousy, and selfishness. And her very basic good nature must be freed, and those are kindness, generosity, forgiveness, commitment, and compassion, etc. Next, please. I would say I see this is the sort of range of emotions which we survey. Here I think in this chart you see factor loadings, positive emotions group themselves, negative emotions cluster themselves very well. What we also advocate through GNH is meditation, by the way, because meditative devices decrease the wandering of mind, and that is very good for positive emotion and concentration. Next, please. Here you see the self-reported stress level, and about 11% of the Bhutanese are already beginning to say that they are in very stressful conditions. Next, please. And idea of suiciding, it seems is associated with very stressful condition. That is why, among other things, we should be attentive to signals about stress. Next, please. Another emotion which seizes us very often and during which we do not experience happiness is anger. Now, in this chart, you see that anger is more frequent among urban residents. Next, please. And our survey also found that anger frequency is higher among female than male population. This chart shows the health domain. A range of physical health conditions, health knowledge, risk behavior, and health systems are assessed in GNH. Overall, a person, according to GNH, should have fundamentally a healthy lifestyle. And that depends on right food, that depends on taking physical activity every day. The norm is something like 3 kilometers per day. That also depends on clean environment and wholesome social connections. Without that, we will begin to have some psychological problem. Without this fundamentally good system, her health is bound to suffer, leading to increasing expenditure to prop it up by medical care. And I think in the last 30-40 years, we do see this trend, that people are not living healthily in healthy lifestyle, but have to depend more and more on drugs, more and more on surgery, and etc. Next, please. This is another painting of mine. Here I try to project my imagination of Bhutan as the mandala of health. But the idea is very simple. That is that health is shown to be a function ultimately of two things: healthy social environment on the one hand, and a healthy natural environment on the other. Only if you have these two broad conditions right, then the more immediate causes of good health, like good food, exercise, gyms, operate very well. Next, please. Oh, I think I should pass this complicated chart. Next, please. Oh, this one shows that 5% of the Bhutanese adult population is, of course, subject to certain margin of error in measurement, has decided to be heavier than necessary. Next, please. With respect to risky behavior, smoking, you see in this chart in Bhutan, puffing level has come down due to new legislative ban on commerce in tobacco. There's absolute ban in this country now, and if you are found selling tobacco, you can be taken to prison for 3 months. So now I think there are some cities where there are lots of foreigners, where 10% of the population smoke. Next, please. But Buddhists do not easily give up alcohol. They really enjoy it, I must say, to the detriment of their health. And this graph also points out that the main intoxicated group is really the male population. In spite of the culture and Buddhist influence, which tells that not only alcohol but any tangible or intangible consumption which clouds one thinking is discouraged, should be discouraged, because it says that our mind is innately brilliant and sane. And, if it is not kind of loaded with mental toxins and all kind of deranging materials. Next, please. Oh, this one shows that the healthy days in 30 days in a month is on average 27 days. And this is a matter of great concern, because people lose about 3 days to elements of some kind or the other. Next, please. But one of the most invisible causes of ill health is really imbalance use in time. We all have 24 hours equally, but we do not and cannot use it equally well because of our occupation, because of our income level, and so on and so forth. But we should, according to GNH, enjoy ample time for exercise, socialization, leisure, and then we should have wholesome sleep of about 7 hours and 33 minutes. That's the average in Bhutan. Next, please. I mentioned that we all don't use 24 hours equally well. Here you see, due to various conditions, Eastern Bhutanese people work much harder. Their working hours are above average, and this is because they have relatively less labor-saving devices or technology, and these are places from where migration is also heaviest. So our research was able to link between length of hard work by day and out-migration. This connection has been tentatively established. Next, please. Within life cycle, as you all know, people work most within the age bracket of 46 and 50. This is also true in Bhutan, and our working hours peak at 518 minutes a day. The implication of this curve is that policy needs to make intervention, and these curves need to be made flatter in order for people to be healthier and happier. Of course, we cannot skip midlife when happiness dips because of the intensity of this work, because of the pressure of work when we are between 46 and 50. But we can draw lessons of what we can avoid during this tense period in our life. Next, please. Oh, I think here you see the average length of time spent by Bhutanese people on non-work activities. So it includes many things. So let's go to the next one. Women in general work longer, whether they are in urban areas or rural areas, and this must be an explanation for lower psychological well-being of women in general. Next, please. Yes, this is a self-explanatory chart. Monks snacking, but eating takes on average 87 minutes a day for a Bhutanese. If you assume that our lifespan is 70, then we spent in our whole life about 4 years and 2 months eating and drinking. Next, please. I'm sure that you spend longer time in Scotland eating and drinking. This is a person in Bhutan going for work. The point I wish to make about this is that we have forgotten the joy of slowness while working or doing something. We all rush and hurry, and that takes the goodness and pleasure out of it. Next, please. Here you see a Bhutanese mother giving bath to her twin. The main point is caregiving is a very important aspect of a good society, and that can go missing when either people don't have time, family has broken down, or market has encroached into communal and social life and norms. So that can increase cost as the activity of caregiving shift from the community and society to the market. Next please. Yes, this is about grooming, and it's not so unimportant from the point of view of health. And next please. A Bhutanese spends anywhere between 28 minutes to 43 minutes on average, depending on your occupation, grooming, washing, dressing, undressing, going to toilets, etc. But what this finding really shattered is that the preconception that housewives spend more time making themselves up, sprucing and grooming. They actually spend the least amount of time on that activity. Next please. Sacred time, time when you can experience emptiness, when you can meditate, is one of the most important elements of temporal life. And 40% of Bhutanese experience sacred time for about 79 minutes a day. Rest do it on other time. Next please. So I'm coming to the end of my talk. I would like to now conclude by showing this general scheme of GNH. Indicators are useful to measure progress against known benchmark, and benchmark has to be ascertained by a survey every 3 years, which we do. But we also need other tools to apply to organization when they make their decisions to align it with GNH. And this is done through something called GNH policy screening tools, which is really a rudimentary framework for policy analysis against some 32 criteria, which is linked to Gross National Happiness Index. Next please. Why do we do all these things? Really, the main purpose of GNH indicators is to identify people who are unhappy so that interventions can be made. Intervention can be made at various levels. Some of the interventions have to be made at the government level, some at the community level, but some through awareness by individuals changing behavior. So there are levels of interventions we can urge. But in order to find out who are unhappy, we have to know where they are, why they are unhappy, and in what aspect they are unhappy. And this is done through Gross National Happiness Survey and Index construction. Next please. Since I would like to say this is the second last slide, is that identifying unhappy people involves two types of threshold. We have to find out whether people are below these two thresholds. The first threshold is at the level of a variable. A variable may be like, say, a qualitative thing like feeling of safety, not safe at all, safe or somewhat safe. In this case, we have agreed that feeling always safe is a necessary condition or necessary threshold for a person to feel happy. So a high threshold is set for the person to be happy. If he doesn't qualify, then he is unhappy. The second threshold is at the level of total number of variables. So according to the result of the GNH index, next please. Next please. 10.4% of people are unhappy, 47% are narrowly happy, 32% are extensively happy, and 8% are deeply happy. Now this tonality or gradation of happiness has to do with the number of variables they command out of 124 total factors. So overall in this country, although the economic development level is quite low, people are generally happy. Thank you very much.